What if I told you that 6 Space Marines could hold their own against an entire squad of enemies, outshoot snipers, and punch through the toughest armor and kill team? Sounds broken, right? Well, not exactly. Welcome to the Angels of Death, an elite strike force of Primaris Marines who look like emperors, chosen warriors on paper, but play like a carefully balanced puzzle on the table. So what are the Angels of Death? They're basically the Space Marine starter kill team. You'll find them in Kill Team Starter Set, and they're built from a mix of intercessors and assault intercessors. You run with just 6 models. Yeah, 6. Which means every decision matters. These aren't the kinds of teams where you could throw a couple bodies forward and not care. Every loss is painful. And here's the fun part. They're both one of the most beginner-friendly and one of the most unforgiving teams in the game. Easy to learn, hard to master. Have you ever played a team that looks amazing at first, but after a few games you realize, oh wow, I actually have to think? That's the Angels of Death. Each Marine comes with 14 wounds, a 3+ save, and 3 APL. That's beefy. They've got the Astaris faction rule, letting them fight twice or shoot twice, and access to chapter tactics, which is where things get spicy. They're dependable and customizable. And they've got some of the best bolt weapons in the entire game. But, and there's always a but, you've only got 6 of them. That's right. While your opponent is throwing 10 or 12 bodies across the board, you're running 6 chunky lads. If you misplace just one, the game tilts hard against you. So are they overpowered? Or are they underpowered? Or are they just balanced Marines finally done right? Stick around because that's exactly what we're diving into. Here's how we'll break it down. First, we'll cover their biggest strengths, what makes them scary. Then their weaknesses, the traps new players fall into. And after that, we'll go deep on their objectives, their weapon choices, their chapter tactics, and finally their tac ops and gear. By the end, you'll know exactly how to field these guys and whether they're the right kill team for you. And yet, as we go, I want you to think, would you run a 6-model elite team? Or do you prefer swarms or bodies? Drop your answer in the comment. I'll be comparing notes with you. Alright, let's jump into their strengths, because while these Marines look straightforward, there's some nasty tricks under their ceramic armor. And one of them might just make you rethink how durable a kill team can really be. So why would you ever want to pick Angels of Death? I mean, 6 models sounds like a disaster waiting to happen, right? Well, here's the thing. When you're running Marines, every single operative is built tough, stronger, and more reliable than most anything your opponent can field. Let's talk about why these guys earn the title Angels of Death. First off, durability. Every Marine is rocking 14 wounds, a 3+ save, and 3 APL. That's the holy trinity of elite stats. You're not just moving and shooting, you're moving, shooting, and still having the action points left to grab an objective or throw a grenade. Against a Horde team, your Marines don't just outlast, they outwork. Think of them like the gym rats at Kill Team. Everybody is running around with 8 or 9 wounds, maybe a 4+ save if they're lucky. Your Marines, 14 wounds and a 3+ save. They don't skip leg day. They skip dying. Unless your dice betray you, and let's be honest, when don't they? And here's where it gets nasty. The Astartes rule lets your Marines fight twice or shoot twice. Most teams can't dream of doing that. You can fire a bolt rifle, then launch a grenade, or just swing twice in melee and delete someone who thought they were safe. The sheer action economic here makes Marines feel relentless, and it's not just a gimmick. It changes how you plan your activations. You don't have to choose between shooting and positioning. You can do both. And have you ever had a game where your dice just said, nope? That's where Purity Seal comes in. Once per turning point, if you roll 2 or more misses, you can flip one of those into a hit. It's like the Emperor himself is leaning over your shoulder saying, nah, that bolt round does hit. It's not flashy, but it makes your Marines insanely reliable. Speaking of reliability, the Operatives themselves. You've got one of the best snipers in the entire game in the Eliminator. Silent weapons ignore obscure. It can potentially fire 3 times in a turning point. He's a 12 wound glass cannon, but left unchecked, he dominates boards like Galadark. Then there's the Grenader. Free frag and crack grenades that hit on 3s, that's basically free equipment baked right into your roster. And don't sleep on chapter tactics. This is where you make the Angels of Death feel like your Marines. Want more melee? Take Dueler. Want to outshoot everybody? Sharpshooter. Want to stay mobile and slippery? You've got that too. Sure, you don't get endless options like other factions do, but what you do get is flexibility, enough to adapt. And of course, the bolt weapons. These aren't your dad's bolters. Stalker bolt rifles bring range and piercing crits. Auto bolter gives you turret for clearing clustered enemies in tight maps. Even the basic bolter holds its own. Marines may not spam plasma like some factions, but their bolter discipline keeps them consistent. So let's stack this up. Every model is a tank. You got rerolls baked into your rolls. You can double shoot or double fight. Your weapons hit harder than most teams. And you got a sniper that can delete key targets from across the board. That's a lot of firepower packed into 6 operatives. And here's the hidden strength, mental load, or rather the lack of it. You don't have to juggle 12 different Aurora effects or ability chains. You've got 6 Marines, each with clear rules. That means less time second guessing and more time focusing on the mission. In tournaments, this is gold. When your opponent is cracking 20 rule triggers, you're just playing the game. But here's the thing for every strength. There's a catch. Because while your Marines can outlast and outgun most enemies, there are cracks in the ceramic armor. And if you don't know what they are, you'll find out the hard way. Up next, we're breaking down the weaknesses of Angels of Death, the pitfalls that catch new players off guard, and the matchups that'll make you question why you ever left the safety of the chapter. Spoiler, one of them is chaos flavored and it's ugly. Alright, so Marines sound like walking gods, right? Well, let's pump the brakes, because for every strength that the Angel Death brings, there are just as many cracks in the power armor. And if you don't play around them, you're going to watch your so-called unstoppable elites get tabled by a bunch of group tier operatives. The biggest weakness, simple numbers. 6 models, that's it. When your opponent floods the board with 10, 12, even 14 operatives, they control the pace of the game. They'll be flipping objectives, screening lanes, and trading bodies. Well, every time you lose one model, you're down a massive chunk of your firepower. Think of it this way. Losing one guardsman is like dropping a French fry. Losing a space marine is like dropping your whole burger. Sure, you still have food, but you're hurting. Every casualty matters, and you don't have bodies to throw away. This bleeds into another weakness, mission play. A lot of TAC Ops and Kill Team reward spreading out, holding multiple objectives, or swarming midpoint. That's hard to do when you got 6 models. Sure, Marines can bullet an objective, but they can't be everywhere at once. Once a good Horde team, nope. Against a good Horde team, you're going to feel stretched thin. And yes, you got durability, but that 3+ save, it doesn't look so hot when plasma guns, melted, or mortar wounds are on the table. Suddenly your elite warriors with 14 wounds goes down in one volley. And trust me, nothing feels worse than watching your 22-point intercessor sergeant get deleted by a rat with a hot gun. Another trap. Overconfidence in specialist. The Eliminator's sniper is deadly, but he's a glass cannon at 12 wounds. One good charge or counter sniper shot, and he's gone. Same with your Grenader. He's got free toys, but if you send him in carelessly, you just wasted one of your biggest tools. Marines don't get redundancy. Lose a specialist, and that role is gone. Then there's activation economy. You got 6 moves. Your opponent might have 12. That means for every action you take, they've got 2. This is especially brutal late in the turning point, when they can see all your moves and still have half their team to respond with. Outnumbered doesn't just mean outactivated, it means outmaneuvered. in terrain can be a nightmare. Marines love sightlines for their rifles, but put them in a board like Gallowdark, and suddenly their long-range firepower isn't worth much. Sure, autos do better here, but if you're playing up close, which means melee specialists can shoot through you before you even get double shot. And don't get me even started on CP. You don't get a ton of crazy ploys to chain together like other teams. Your flexibility comes from chapter tactics. But once your opponent learns how those work, they'll play around them. You're not tricksy, you're straightforward, which is good and bad. And finally, the matchups against hordes like guards, orcs, or pathfinders. You're always on the back foot in board control. Against other elites, Chaos Legionaries, for example, you're in for a mirror match, except they've got tricks like psychic powers or marks of chaos to push their operatives over the top. It's winnable, but it's uphill. So let's recap. Low numbers, struggle on objective-heavy missions, weak to high damage weapons, specialists that can get picked off, limited activation compared to horde teams, and a playstyle that's powerful but predictable once your opponent learns it. But here's the twist. Those weaknesses don't make the Angels of Death bad. They make them fair. If you lean into your strengths and play around your flaws, you'll hold your own. But if you forget you're only bringing 6 Marines, well, your opponent will remind you very fast. So how do you turn these weaknesses into opportunities? The answer is in your roster. Let's talk about your operatives, the all-stars of the Angels of Death, and how each one of them brings something unique to the battlefield. Because if you don't know which Marine does what, you'll end up treating them all the same. And that's the fastest way to throw a game. Let's break down the roster because one of these operatives is secretly the MVP. Okay, now let's talk about the real stars of the Angels of Death, the operatives. Because while they're all Space Marines on paper, on the board each has a very different job. And if you don't understand their rules, you're going to end up misusing them. And in a 6-model team, that's basically game over. Let's start at the top with your sergeant. You've got 2 main flavors, Assault Intercessor Sergeant and Intercessor Sergeant. Both are strong leaders, but they steer your team in completely different directions. The Assault Intercessor Sergeant is your melee bully. Give him a chainsword or a power weapon, pair it with a plasma or a bolt pistol, and he's leading the charge. He's perfect if you're going dueler or aggressive chapter tactics and want to pressure objectives with raw melee. On the other hand, the Intercessor Sergeant is your gun line anchor. Stalker bolt rifle, power weapon, that's the classic setup. He hangs back, supports tactical or sharpshooter builds, and helps you dominate long sightlines. If you're leaning ranged, he's your go-to. Then there's the Captain. Now this guy's basically your Swiss Army knife. He's tanky. He's got the Iron Halo for survivability. And he's one of the few models that makes a power fist actually reliable with a 3+ hitting. Plus, his ability to flip doctorates mid-game. That can change the tempo when your opponent least expects it. The Grenader is a auto-include. Why? Because frag and crack grenades that hit on 3s is insane value. Most teams have to pay equipment points for that kind of flexibility. But you just get it. Frags clear hordes, cracks punch through elites, all without burning your equipment pool. But here's the catch. Don't waste him. Too many players eat the Grenader into enemy lines thinking he's expendable. Remember, you only have 6 models. If you lose him early, you're just throwing away one of your most versatile tools. Be patient. Grenades win games when you use them in the right time. Now the Eliminator Sniper. This guy is infamous, silent, ignores obscuring, and if you position him right, he can potentially fire 3 times in a turning point. That's nuts. He's your best tool for deleting key operatives across the board. The downside, he is squishier than the rest at 12 wounds. Protect him like your MVP, because that's exactly what he is. Seriously, if you don't protect your sniper, you're basically throwing the game. Think of him like the quarterback. If he gets sacked early, you're in trouble. Next up, the Intercessor Gunner with the grenade launcher. Solid all around, brings both blast and piercing to your team, and helps you threaten enemies behind cover. He's not flashy, but he fills gaps in your shooting game. And finally, the regular intercessor and assault intercessor. These guys are your bread and butter. Don't overlook them. Intercessors with bolt rifles hold backfield and chip damage from range, while assault intercessors dive forward with chainswords to trade bodies. They're not just the stars, they're the foundation of your roster is built on. So how do you put it all together? Well, think of your team as a puzzle. You've got your anchor, usually the sergeant or captain. You got your scalpel, the sniper. You got your wild card, the grenader. And you got your core intercessors filling the gaps. When you use each one for their role, the team clicks. But the second you ask a bolter marine to be a melee bully, or you waste your sniper's sightline, the whole machine breaks down. So here's the real question. Do you know which of your marines is your MVP? Is it the sniper, the grenader, or maybe you're that player who makes a humble bolt rifle intercessor carry games? That's the fun part. Every roster feels a little different depending on your playstyle. The best players don't just copy and paste a list. They learn their personalities of their operatives. They know when to hold a grenade, when to risk a sniper shot, when to push the sergeant forward, and when to hang back. That's what separates a good Angels of Death team from a great one. But remember that best operatives, you still need the right support. And that means chapter tactics. Because if you're not using the right combo of primary and secondary tactics, you're basically leaving free power on the table. Up next, we're breaking down chapter tactics, the buffs that let you flex your marines into melee brawlers, range snipers, or slippery objective grabbers. And one of them is so good, I almost feel bad for using it. Almost. All right, you got your marines. You know which one does what. Now here's where the Angel's Death gets spicy. Chapter tactics. This is the part of the roster that actually makes your team feel like yours. And if you're not paying attention here, you're basically leaving free power on the table. Here's how it works. You get to pick a primary tactic and a secondary tactic. The primary is locked in for the whole game. The secondary, then when you can swap every turning point thanks to adaptive tactics, which means you're never stuck. Flexibility is baked into this faction. It's like going to a buffet. You're always got your main plate, but every round you can sneak back for a different side dish. Sometimes you want fries, sometimes mac and cheese. Except here, it's do I want to dodge melee or shred armor this turn? So what are your best options for Primaris? Mobile and sharpshooter are standouts. Mobile lets you fall back for cheap and ignore APL reduction, which is huge against control-heavy factions. Sharpshooter, on the other hand, makes your stalker rifle absolutely terrifying with crit boost. And don't underestimate Dueler for melee builds. If you want your assault intercessors to punch above their weight, Dueler gives them the edge they need to win trades. Have you ever had your sergeant shade sword through an elite operative and live to tell the tale? That's Dueler doing work. Secondary tactics are where the flexibility comes in. You can go stealthy if you need to weather shooting, siege specialists if you're heavy on terrain, or aggressive if you're about to dive into melee. The fact you can swap every turning point means you're never stuck in the wrong mode. You're always adapting to the mission. And that's the secret sauce. Adaptive tactics don't just make you flexible, it makes your opponent miserable. They can't pin you down. Every round, you shift gears. One turn, you're tanking shots, the next, you're deleting models. They never get comfortable. Now let's talk about the biggest choice every Angel of Death player faces. Which bolt rifle to take? Stalker, auto, or standard bolt rifle? Yes, the eternal question. It's like choosing your starter Pokemon, except instead of Charmander, Squirtle, or Bulbasaur, it's piercing crits, turret sprays, or boring bolt reliable. The Stalker bolt rifle is your sniper light option. Long range, high damage, and piercing on crits. If your opponent doesn't have ways to ignore crits, this is often your best pick. Perfect for open board where sightlines matter. The auto bolt rifle? Tough, shines into the dark or tight maps. Turret 1+, lethal 5+ means you're clearing clustered enemies and finishing for crit ups. If you know you're going to a maze of walls, autos will carry the day. And then there's the standard bolt rifle. Flexibility, decent damage, no tricks, it's fine. Not bad, not amazing, but here's the truth. If you can, you'll almost always prefer stalker or auto. The standard is kind of the middle child. So which one's the best? That depends on the mission and your style. Want to sit back and punish people at range? Stalker. Want to brawl in hallways? Auto. Want a little bit of both? Well, the standard rifle won't let you down unless your dice betray you. And let's be real, they will. So to wrap this up, chapter tactics give you adaptability. Bolt rifle choices give you identity. Combine the two and suddenly your Angels of Death feel like your Marines, not just generic Primaris Marines. And that's huge for both gameplay and hobby vibes. But we're not done yet, because even with great tactics and weapons, you still need to play the mission. And that means knowing your tac ops and your equipment, because the wrong loadout can turn a winnable game into a blowout. Up next, we're diving into tac ops and gear, the tools that separate casual Marines from competitive ones. And there's one piece of equipment so good it might as well come with a warning label. Alright, we talked about strengths, weaknesses, operatives, and tactics. But none of it matters if you can't play the mission. Kill Team is won and lost on tac ops and equipment. So let's finish strong with the tools that make Angels of Death work. First, tac op. Angels of Death are an elite team, which means their best tac op aren't always the same ones a horde would take. You're not spreading out across the whole board, you're picking fights and holding key points. Secure center line is a classic for Marines. You're chunky, you're durable, you can bully mid-board. If you're not fighting for the center, what are you even doing? Hold the line is another solid pick. Your 6 Marines can actually screen backfield really well with 3 APL. On the flip side, avoid tac ops that ask you to spread too thin. Things like seize ground or plant banner can stretch your 6 Marines past their breaking point. You just don't have the numbers to cover everything at once. Pick tac ops that lean into what you're already doing well. Durability, objective bullying, and elite trades. And hey, if you ever lost a game because you picked the wrong tac ops, don't worry. We've all been there. It's like ordering a salad at a steakhouse. Technically an option, but you're not going to be happy with it. Now let's talk equipment. The Angels of Death don't have the biggest toy box, but what they do have is clutch. Purity seals are basically mandatory. Re-rolling dice once per turning point saves games. Aspect is another big one, letting you strip away enemy conceal and force them into the open. Don't forget grenades. Even though the Grenadier gives you free access to frag, extra copies on your other intercessors can swing fights. Frags clear groups. Cracks punch through elites, always worth considering depending on the mission. Now here's a fun question. Are you the type of player who loves building thematic Marines, or do you lean fully into competitive optimization? Because with Angels of Death, you can actually do both. The fluff matches the crunch. They're elite shock troopers in the lore, and they feel like elite shock troopers on the board. So let's wrap it up. The Angels of Death are a beginner-friendly team with surprising depth. They hit hard, they're flexible with chapter tactics, and every model matters. But they're also unforgiving. Lose a single Marine and you feel it. They reward smart, deliberate play, punishing overconfidence. Are they the best kill team in the game? No. Are they the worst? Definitely not. They sit right in the sweet spot. Strong enough to win, balanced enough to be fair, and stylish enough to feel awesome doing it. And honestly, that's what makes them fun. So remember, play to your strengths. Know your operatives' roles. Pick tac ops that fit your game plan. And never forget, you've only got 6 Marines. Treat them like the heroes they are, and they'll carry you. So what do you think? Would you run Angels of Death, or do you prefer a beginner, swarmier kill team? Drop your thoughts below. I want to see which side you're on. Because here's the truth. 6 Marines might not sound like a lot, But when they're the Emperor's Angels of Death, sometimes that's all you need.